Greetings and salutations, listener! It is I, Eric J. Chucci, joined as always by the boy.
Hey.
And this is the kickoff to the anniversary month of the Two Nerds podcast. I almost got the name of our podcast wrong on the anniversary month podcast. We have been bringing this shit to you for a year.
And oh my, what a year it's been. That's a cliche, but there have been some really good podcasts and some other ones.
But we'd appreciate it if you would like all of them and subscribe to the channel. More importantly, if you go check out our buddy Super Blizzard. His Shining Was Auto song, Let's Get Hardcore, is our theme music. He also is just a peach. You can buy Joy Lancer on Steam, so you really have no excuse not to. And to support him. So there, because he's nice.
There you go. Done and done.
Done and fucking done.
So this week is another in the series of podcasts we've done that were suggested by you, the listener. You marvelous entity, you Ultimo, you suggested that we do a podcast on our 10 favorite characters.
And I would like to say, before we get started, from the bottom of my cockles, fuck you!
Maybe below the cockles?
In a coccular region. I reiterate, fuck you, listener!
Yeah, fuck you. This sucked.
Oh, man.
This sucked a lot.
Like, I've gone through, 3 revisions, and I'm still not sure.
I gotta be honest, plans got jumbled. This is not the podcast we're planning on doing this week. I have a list. I am none too confident about it, but it's the list you're getting, listener.
Well, you know what? If you disagree and you think we've missed something, there's always the comment section, or you can hit us up on Twitter. Our tweeteries are in the description, too, so...
Link in the doobly-doo.
Let's go ahead and get this started, because I feel like we're going to jibber-jabber on for a long time.
Okay. 10-1?
Oh, gosh, yeah, 10-1. I mean, I think the one spot, if the listener knows us, is not a mystery, but let's go 10-1.
All right.
I do want to preface as well, one last thing before we roll right into it. This is one of those lists that is our top 10 favorite characters of all time at this moment in time, unless we're forgetting somebody.
Lots of caveats. Also, again, not the best, our favorites. Those
No,
are the same thing.
One of my revisions was removing people who were probably better, more well-developed characters, but just not, I don't love them as much.
All right.
Yeah, so let's start with you, in honor of you being the second nerd of the Two Nerds podcast, a cast which includes 4 nerds and several auxiliary people.
All right. Look, we're not saying it's an accurate name. We're saying it's our name.
The Some Nerds podcast.
Some nerds. All right. Let's see. Number 10 is drawing from an old maximum. These sort of lists should never be without something from your favorite thingamajig. And number 10 spot goes to a character from my favorite book, which I've mentioned on the podcast before. It's Hardy Hackett from Colt Regan Fortunate Son. All right. Listener, I'm not, normally I don't mention this, but Eric, White here, the guy beside me.
That's me. I'm handsome.
He writes books. One of those books is Colt Regan Fortunate Son. It's a really good book. It's my favorite book. What you should do is read it. I'm mentioning this now because this entire description is just fucking spoiler city.
I tell you what, I will put up something visual
to let you know when the spoilers
are done. Maybe an annotation. Usually I think those show up on the actual timeline. So you can just skip to just after that and you'll be safe.
Yeah, but because there's going to be a lot of spoilers here, but these spoilers directly impact Two Nerds product. So
well, there's going to be a lot of spoilers, but chances are people have done the stuff that's on our list. I know my sales numbers, and most people have not read my books.
So maybe you should. Right, so 5-second warning.
Remember 3-minute warning?
They were a good tag team.
It was a good gimmick for a couple months, but then it just
got really tired. Yeah.
And then they tried to be a hip-hop tag team. But then one was Hugh Manger. I miss him.
Yeah, he was. All right. Hardy Hackett is the secret double twist villain of Colt Regan Fortunate Son. And one of the reasons I put him at number 10 is because that's the spot he ended up at with all the sorting I did. The other reason is because I wanted to get this out of the way, because stroking White's ego is bad for all of us. Look, he might try and take over the world.
There's no might.
So, I'm just going to go right past that because it's just facts. This twist got me. I did not see this coming. And it's not that you couldn't have seen it coming. I went back and I read that book twice in quick succession. The second time through, the clues were there. He roosted me. I like to think I'm not an easy guy to fool. So that's part of the reason. The other part of the reason is just how amazingly pitiful Hardy Hackett is. He's a good villain because he is a bad guy and he has done horrible things, but ultimately he's just sad and pitiable. How I mentally image him probably has a lot to do with that, and that is also a spoiler, but that's one I'm not going to give you because you can figure it out if you read the books.
It's less of a spoiler and more of like the joke.
Yeah, it's the joke, and I'm not gonna spoil the joke for you. I don't have a lot to say about this, and I don't want to cut off too much of the podcast for those people who don't want spoilers, so I'll wrap it up here. We can put the annotation back in.
Yeah, that sounds safe. There's no way that they would come to this point and then find out that everybody in the cult book dies in the third book. But moving on. No, I'm not. That would deny me sales. That doesn't happen. Please buy my books. I love you. But you were tricked for a second, right? It was a fun second. Number 10 on my list is what you might call a recent edition. And I put him on, took him off, put him back on. And that is Cole from Dragon Age Inquisition. I really didn't want 2 Dragon Age Inquisition characters on my list. Spoiler hints.
Too bad, motherfucker.
But yeah, Cole and I think alike. I have described this very briefly on the podcast before, and I'm sure a lot of other people are like this too, but it's very rare to find somebody else who does this, much less
an example of it in fiction.
Yeah. I don't think in words so much as I do feelings and like colors and imagery and really fucking abstract shit. I can think in words, but it's easier for me not to. So it's sometimes hard for me to communicate thoughts and feelings. You'll hear me on the podcast stumble over my word choices, try to refine a point a little bit before I'm comfortable moving on. That's because I'm trying to translate from the language we colloquially refer to as purple into English. And it can be difficult at times. The way Cole goes into his little alliteration zones is like so in tune with how I think about shit. Just dancing from one point to a next, eliminating all filigree about it, taking the meat of what is important about these sensations he has and moving on once it's established. I also really respect his desire to help, and it's not a selfish desire, because that's something to strive for. And I think in a favorite character, there's got to be parts of it that you kind of look up to, or that you wish you could be more like. I mean, not necessarily, but I would think if they're at the top of your list and you're not like a person with shit person goals, you're probably going to have some of that.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd like to be able to be more helpy, but I don't have magic ghost powers, so that
much more difficult.
Yeah, it makes it difficult. But I do what I can where I can, and I don't know, I just feel really in tune with that. Honestly, the funny thing was when we first started playing Dragon Age Inquisition, this is my last point before we move on, we kind of joked around the house that there was a character for the boy and there was a character for Brandy. Actually, 2 characters for the boy, 2 characters for Brandy. But the only person who was really at all like me was Varric. And the comparison is strong, but...
Yeah, buy my book.
But it's more superficial. The more I played this game, there are 2 characters who are incredibly like me. One of them is Cole. The other one comes later. And I did not realize that until the more I started playing. But let's move on to number 9. What did you have, the boy?
For number 9, I had Michael Carpenter. He's from the Dresden Files. He's
I like this character.
Knight of the Cross. Oh boy. Alright, this is going to be kind of a long one, listener, because I'm setting up something that I have later in the list, because there's another person that I like for the exact same reasons, but I like them more. But they both deserve to be on here. Michael Carpenter is an incredibly well-written character. I don't know if there's anyone on this list who I'm not going to say that about. But more so, he is a good man. A good example I use when talking about comic books a lot is that Marvel tends to write people. DC tends to write icons. They tend to write things you can look up to. You're supposed to look up to Superman, not empathize with him. Michael Carpenter, and to a greater extent the other person on this list higher up, represent a great marriage of those two things for me. Because he is someone you can look up to, but he's also a person. He has flaws. They explore those flaws in the books. And some of the short stories and some other supplemental material, they explore them more. He's not perfect, but he tries. And almost every time he succeeds, not always to defeat the bad guy. Usually that's Harry Dresden. It's called the Dresden Files, after all. But to be a good person. That is such a rare quality to find in real life that when I see it really, really exemplified in fictional characters, I can't help but love them. That's about... Sorry, I had to spray the cat. He was being a douche. That's about all I have to say for that. I mean, aside from the fact that he's also super badass,
He is such a badass.
which also goes a long way to being in my good books. Some of the stuff that he does with the main character is so righteous, and I don't mean that like an 80s guy. I mean that in the classical sense, that I can't help but love the character for it.
I think that's part of what makes him so good, too, is because he is a badass, but at the same time, he's a good man. And that's kind of a hard line to walk sometimes.
Yeah, and he does it very well.
Yeah, he does it very well, and it's written very well. My number 9 slot is sort of a cheating.
He's a cheater. He's got a couple cheating slots here.
Really, I mean, one of them isn't really it.
Yeah, no, move on.
But my number 9 slot is just straight up cheating because it's two different people from two completely different sections of fiction. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized I love them for the exact same reasons. Those two characters are the boss from Metal Gear, specifically Snake Eater, and Severus Snape from Harry Potter and the Magical Hoozajiggy. You can talk a lot about their character motivations and their personalities and you know, this, that, and the other thing, but that's set decoration around the importance of their spirit and strength of character. These are two people who did unimaginable, unspeakable things, awful things that went against what they wanted to do for the greater good, and in one case would never get any recognition for it, and in the other case got so very little recognition for it.
And only got that recognition through the concerted, lifelong efforts of a national hero.
But they still did it, knowing that they were probably going to go down in history as a traitor and a monster.
They did the right thing when it wasn't the best day to be doing the right thing.
When it was the hardest time to do the right thing. And it wasn't just, you know, they were in the right place at the right time and chose to do the right thing in that instant. No, it was slow. They had to wake up every morning and go, this is what I have to do.
This is the right thing to do. There's another person I haven't actually seen this, I just read about it. It's a Doctor Who thing. I don't mention those very often.
Yeah.
There's the Doctor who was in the Time War. That's a different Doctor.
Right.
They don't refer to him. Because the other Doctors, the other incarnations of him past that, say he doesn't deserve the name. He did awful, terrible things that don't deserve to be called the Doctor. At the end, you find out that he was essentially that. He was doing the right thing despite knowing he would be looked at as a monster for the rest of time. Later on, one of the other incarnations found that out and said, you were the Doctor on the day that it wasn't possible to get it right. That's the kind of choice you're looking at. That's,
Yeah.
It's not possible to be the hero here, but you're going to do the right thing anyway.
And that's, that takes so much strength of character, and it makes sense from both of these people. And when you realize, the other point of it is that they have a focal point, a foil, if you will, in the main character of whatever thing it is you're in the fiction. The boss with Big Boss with Naked Snake, and Severus Snape, of course, with Harry Potter. A lot of snake imagery as well. That's interesting. But here's this person who they, in a way, care very deeply for, and really don't want to see any harm come to them. But at the same time, either because they have to, or because they probably should, they have to treat them like shit. And I mean, that's just an extra step of even harder. And you, in that protagonist's shoes, go, "No, betrayal! I can't believe you! Why are you so awful to me?" And then, in the end, come to realize, oh, because you were the saint no one could ever be. But yeah, I love both of those characters, and for the exact same fucking reason. So let's move on to number 8. What do you got, pal?
Talizora Vas Normandy from Mass Effect. And I use that specific form of her name intentionally. I deeply love this character. She is not like that, Dick.
Yes, you did.
Well, she was the person I romanced, but that's because she was a great character. She was the kind of person who was looking down the barrel of this ridiculously awful situation, and she was one of the few people in that game who was still somewhat upbeat in Mass Effect 3, and Mass Effect 2 even. In Mass Effect 1, she was good. In 2 and 3, she got better. And she is capable. She is, from a pure mechanic standpoint, probably my favorite party member to have in my party. She's strong. She's intelligent. She knows what she's doing. And at the same time, she has the ability to be kind of a doof. And that's a great character.
It's endearing.
Yeah, she's very endearing, and how best to explain this part? It's actually kind of difficult. She's hopeful in a world where hope seems somewhat naive. I think part of the reason I like her is, and this is me humble bragging, I was able to give her the thing she hoped for, and got to see the positive end of that character arc. So it's such a great conclusion to the character that it makes me more fond of her.
Yeah, that's nice. My number 8 is not as complex or deep in the fiction in which she appeared, but she had a very strong impact on me, and I took her off the list for a little while when I had my list laid out as the best characters that I like. But I realized that the people who are on the list, they might be more fleshed out and more deep and more...
Yeah, Talizora Vas Normandy, not the deepest character in the universe, just I love her.
Well, yeah, but she's got a lot of depth. Compared to my number 8, Freya Crescent from Final Fantasy IX. It's really hard for me to go into why I like this character, because the best aspects of her aren't highlighted so much in-game as they have been fleshed out in fanfiction I've read. And it's not that the only reason I like the character is because of the fanfiction, it's more that those writers took those aspects of the character and ran with them. And I think, ironically, I kind of like her for the same reasons you like Tali. Even when things look dire, she's got a can-do attitude. She's not as cute or as geeky, but that's not really how I run. She's a badass and a matron instead of that. She has her softer sides, but they're caring and, caretaker-ish.
Battle mom, as it were.
Yeah, battle mom, as it were. But she's also got such a tragic backstory, and it doesn't end well. Like, I hate opening myself up to have that label applied to me of, oh, you only like it because it's sad and sad things are instantly better. No. I like it when creators are not afraid to make the ending a bad end. And that makes me feel better about the composition as a whole because it meant I was given what they wanted to give me and not just something that they thought I'd like. I respect it from both sides of the coin. So I like that in game, when Irontail Fratley comes back, her long lost love, who she thought for sure was dead and had been searching for years for, and he's amnesiac, doesn't remember anything about her. And he never gets better. The end. But that's her story. Her as a person, it's the battle mom, and she does it so well. She's got snippy one-liners, and she's snarky, but she's also a badass. It's a lot of things I love about a character that can't be on this list that I'll mention later.
Yep.
But a bit softer. And she's a rat person, and I like rats, so there's that.
Hey, you know what? Favorite character. It's all the aspects, as it were.
Yeah, so number 7 for the boy. What do you got?
Albus Dumbledore.
It's like the exact opposite of my number 7.
You should really, really fucking know where Albus Dumbledore is from, listener. Okay, so the many, many reasons I like Albus Dumbledore. First off, I love, to quote the A-Team, I love it when a plan comes together. And the magnificent fucking Xanatos Gambit plan that Albus Dumbledore put together and Harry Potter executed was beautiful. But that's not why I love the character. I love the character because he is one of the best expressions of the Obi-Wan, the mentor character. Somewhat distant with the main character, but ultimately a force for good. Ultimately someone who is wise and strong and knows what the right thing to do is and tries to help the main character toward that end. I love him for that reason. I love Albus Dumbledore because he's fucking hilarious. If you haven't read those books, go back and read them again, even if you have, because he's fucking hilarious, and he has some of the best lines in the whole series. He's a wizard. Look, that's always like plus 10 points for me. I'm sorry, it is. Wizards are great. Wizard Batman, best possible character.
So Dumbledore?
Yes.
Dumbledore's not a detective, though, so points off for that.
Not a detective, doesn't have batarangs. Isn't the knight.
He could get batarangs.
Isn't the knight, and that's important. And he's... Again, I like characters, like most people who have developed opinions on characters and that sort of thing, so most people. I like characters with a certain amount of flaws to them.
Sure.
Not ridiculous, too many flaws, because that's not a fun person to watch if you're just watching a great fucking sobbing wreck all the time. But he has problems with hubris. He has problems with the temptation towards greater power. And you see that reflected in his decisions throughout the series. There are times when him doing a thing would be very helpful, but he doesn't do that thing because he knows he can't handle it. And I love that. I love that J.K. Rowling was honest enough to portray that, and was a good enough writer to know that she had to give the character these flaws to make the story work.
If you have only seen the Harry Potter movies, do us both a favor. Pick up The Half-Blood Prince. Please proceed to read the first 2-3 chapters.
Yeah, roughly.
Not counting the fucking prologue. That little section with Dumbledore is my favorite part of the Harry Potter books, period. It's the reason The Half-Blood Prince is my favorite book in the Harry Potter series. Everything about that is just...
spot on.
And amazing. And they omitted it from the movies, which I understand why, but...
You're still mad.
Well, I'm disappointed that nobody got to see that magnificence committed to film. That and Platform 9 3/4, King's Cross, Ghost, Dumbledore, also good.
Yeah.
But let's go to my number 7. I believe we're on.
Yep.
As I said, complete opposite of the boys. Let me tell you a very, very brief story before I get into this. One of my favorite characters in The Lord of the Rings, possibly my favorite, I'd have to sit down and hash it out, and I didn't have to do that for this list, thankfully, is Boromir. And that's because he is a man who wants to do good and is too tempted by power to do good. Much like you were saying about Dumbledore.
Mm-hmm.
Only whereas Dumbledore knows to go, nope, don't do that. Boromir, not so much. And this guy, gosh, no. My number 7 is from Mass Effect: The Elusive Man. I'm sure it is thanks in no small part to the performance by Martin Sheen.
Because that was an amazing performance.
Simply sublime. But his character arc,
Sure.
who he is, it's just fantastic. I played through Mass Effect as a renegade for the most part, so usually I didn't have any problem with his decisions. And honestly, for the most part, I didn't have any problem with his decisions. He was shrewd and pragmatic, and I wouldn't say amoral, but he didn't catch himself up in morals in Mass Effect 2. And I liked that. He was willing to do the nasty things in order to help for the greater good.
Much like the Severus Snape and the
The
boss beforehand.
Yeah. But he went too far and reached madness in trying to save everything.
And he has that foil in Shepard who is stronger than him.
Right. And especially in my playthrough, because of various reasons, the Elusive Man ended up being this weird kind of father figure to my Shepard. And, you know, those betrayals cut deeper than they might have for your average player. You know, there was more desire to see him redeemed than there might have been for your average player.
For me, as a counterexample, in my playthrough of Mass Effect, I saw that treachery, my character saw that motherfucker's treacherousness coming a mile away, and when it happened, I was like, good, I was expecting that, time to murder him.
Whereas mine believed in him. I still, I mean, one of the best lines in the series is at the end of Mass Effect 3, but I can. And that was, just the emotion behind it. I could gush forever, but he is a fantastic character, a fantastic, flawed, conflicted villain, and that's why he's on my list.
I love it.
Let's roll on to number 6.
Number 6 is the other guy I mentioned in number 9. This is, for me, the good man. The best example in fiction that I can think of a hero. Just capital H, hero.
Like that song from Spider-Man 2 with Nickelback and Saliva?
Sure, I guess. I don't honestly remember the song you're
No,
talking
you don't? And they say that a hero can save us. You know that one?
Oh!
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no, I do remember that.
Dan Avidan, I have not. Please, say your words.
Steve Rogers, Captain America.
Oh, that's a good one. I like him.
He, everything I said about Michael Carpenter, but more. Steve Rogers is someone that I personally would take orders from, and that's hefty, hefty praise. I'm something of a contrarian by nature. So he's a fictional character, so I don't have to worry about it. But knowing from seeing someone's interactions with the world that if they told me to do something, I would just do it. I would know that it was the right thing to do because the captain said so. That's the kind of beautiful character creation that you can't really come across too many times. even as someone who creates things, you can't get that lucky all the time.
Sure.
And it's not necessarily that he's America, fuck yeah. No, it's not Captain America, I think, is the good character. It's Steve Rogers. And there's an important distinction there.
Well, and I think a lot of it is telling that, Superman often gets referred to both in universe and outside as the big blue Boy Scout. Whereas, even though Captain America would probably fit that example better, he doesn't.
Because he's not. He's not a Boy Scout. He's not pretending to, he doesn't feel, there's no artifice in him. That's a term I use a lot. There's no artifice in his being. Superman, you get the idea that he's constantly struggling to be a good person because the temptation to be God is right there at his fingertips every day, all day. So he has to struggle with it. It's an internal struggle. It's a quiet one, but it's there. That's why he gets joked. He's the big blue Boy Scout because he has that power right at his fingertips, and he always has to remind himself to not take it. Captain doesn't have that. Steve Rogers doesn't have that temptation. He doesn't want to be the king. He doesn't want to be in charge of anybody. As to quote the movie, he just doesn't like bullies. That's really, really great to see. I don't have any other way to describe it better.
No, Cap's great.
And for a lot of comic book characters, you want to, I will tell you, go back and read the comics. It helps you understand the character more. No. Captain America the First Avenger gives you everything you need to know about Steve Rogers.
Phenomenal film.
Severely underrated.
Yeah. Anything else to say about the Star-Spangled Man?
Aside from just gushing, he's real good at throwing shields.
Yeah, that's true.
And punching.
My number 6 is... well, on the official list, the last Mass Effect character I have. I think it's only going to come as a surprise to those who know me that he's not higher, Garrus Vakarian. I'm going to try not to gush, because, you remember the anime podcast? We mentioned that a lot of the questions I avoided that I was getting off the internet were about your waifu, and I said I've never had a waifu. I have had a husbando, and that husbando is Garrus Vakarian.
You have a t-shirt, a literal t-shirt that says, hoping for Garrus, will settle for Caden.
And I got my Gare Bear. My wife, who loves me very, very much, went all the way to Seattle, and I was deprived of her presence for 2 whole weeks. It was almost insufferable. And what does she bring me back? A little Garrus Funko Pop toy.
Because she knows him.
Because she knows me. Garrus is an awesome character who has a very subtle but a very important transformation. He is the best and most ultimate example of one of my favorite character tropes. Probably my favorite character trope. And that is the Lancer. He's Shepard's best bro. Unless you actively hate the guy.
And this is telling, because in Mass Effect 1, I actively hated that guy. In Mass Effect 1, for me, Garrus Vakarian is the most ridiculous, try-hard, loose-cannon cop who doesn't play by the rules you've ever seen in your entire life. He's obviously faking it. By Mass Effect 2, he's not anymore. And that makes all the difference.
And Garrus is all things when he needs to be. When he needs to be playful and cocky, he is. When he needs to be humble and, down to earth, he is. When he needs to show up somebody else because he is that damn good, he does it. When he needs to play second fiddle to Commander Shepard, he does it.
And he does it all with a smile.
I was pleased the day playing Mass Effect 3 I realized I know what a Turian smiling looks like. I feel like
Garrus is grinning,
he grins a lot. That guy smirks, actually. Garrus is responsible for half of my favorite dialogue in Mass Effect 3. Or half of one piece of my favorite dialogue, I should say. The little joking competition between him and Joker. I keep trying to find it online, but I can't. Some of the most poignant shit about off-color humor is said in that little exchange in the game. If you can find it, or if you want to play through Mass Effect 3 and locate it, I would suggest it. But
There's some really actually very deep shit in that
yeah,
little section.
deep little shit in that little section. And I really appreciated it. On top of everything else great about Garrus. There is no shepherd without Vicarian.
I have the urge to like hit the rock. Yeah, there you go. Yes.
Let's move on to number 5. We're rolling.
All right. Number 5, Arya Stark from A Song of Ice and Fire.
I thought you were asking me if I was Stark for a second, and I'm like, what does that mean?
Yeah, you get that a lot. I love Arya in the show. Don't get me wrong. In the books, she's better. It's not as stark as Stark. It's not as stark as the difference between Daenerys in the show, read as super awesome, and Daenerys in the books, read as goddamned insufferable. But Arya in the books is just... she's a person who doesn't fit in, shoved in awful circumstances beyond her control, without any warning, and has everything she's ever loved or treasured or prized ripped away from her for awful, unfair, shitty reasons. And she doesn't whine, and she doesn't cry, and she doesn't become a sobbing wreck. She puts on her big girl panties and fucking deals with it. And I love that. She is one of the strongest characters I've read in fiction. She has an internal strength that is phenomenal. Her character arc is interesting and well written. It's not done yet, but I'm still very interested to see where it goes. Her portrayal is always pretty universal in that she's a child for a lot of it, and she makes dumb decisions, like any child would, and she prioritizes poorly, like so many children would, and yet she's still canny and intelligent and a delight to read about. Which is why I'm sure George R. R. Martin is going to kill her.
At this point, anytime anybody relatively cool shows up in the show, I ask the boy how soon they're going to die. But that seems like a good summary. I'm going to go light on my number 5 for reasons I'm sure you can't deduce, listener. But my number 5 is actually one of my favorite superheroes from when I was a kid, and he still stands up there today. I have no clue what that list looks like now, but in terms of being a character, my number 5 favorite is Batman. What can I say that won't be said soon? The reason I like Batman above all other reasons, because there are many reasons, but the reason I like him above all other reasons is because he exemplifies above all else the struggle to be yourself when what you are is nothing anyone will accept, even though you're doing the right thing for you, those around you, and maybe even on a wider scale. Even if you're not hurting anybody, except maybe those who deserve it, you're not welcome. And he does it the best. He does it without whining. He does it without resorting to humor as a defense mechanism.
Which is hard, listener.
Difficult.
Let me tell you from first-hand experience.
I'm sure we can both attest to that. But that, more than anything, is why I like Batman. All of the other stuff is also very, very good. There are certain interpretations of Batman I don't like. And because I focus less on him in recent years, I think is why he's lower on this list than some other characters. But he's still definitely in my top 10 favorite superheroes of all time. Probably in my top 5.
Interesting.
Let's go to number 4. What do you got at 4?
Irony of ironies. The Joker.
Really?
I will go light on this for reasons that I'm sure will not be made clear soon. I love the Joker for a few reasons. One, he is so delightfully open to interpretation. 2,
That's nice about him.
he his interpretation is always fairly consistent. Whatever Batman is, he's the opposite. He is the coin. He is the other side of Batman. And he works as a foil. He is the perfect Batman villain. Because he works so well as a foil to the Dark Knight. And that's another reason I love him. The third, and this is kind of, I don't really know, I don't want to put a qualifier on it. Judge for yourself. Mark Hamill. That performance, both in Batman the Animated Series, the new Batman Adventures, and the Arkham games, is the Joker. He's open to interpretation, but at the end of the day, one of those interpretations is the correct one, and that's Mark Hamill. It's just when I read Joker in comics, that's the voice I hear. When Joker laughs and I read that bubble, that's the voice I hear. When ever anything happens that doesn't have a voice actor involving the Joker, that's the voice I hear. And it's so, at turns, humorous and chilling and just generally entertaining that I can't help but attach it to the character, and it's so good that the character can't help but rise in my estimation from it. There's a lot of other reasons I like the Joker. A lot of them have to do with like psychology stuff and the stuff he represents in, cultural psyche. I've written papers on Batman. But I think I'll stop here.
Right on.
No reason.
Yeah, no real reason. My number 4, I mentioned earlier. When I started playing Dragon Age Inquisition, I thought this character was alright, interesting, and I thought he was a lot more like the boy than me. For a number of reasons, in no small amount, physical resemblance. But the more times I've played the game and watched other people play the game, and the more of his dialogue I've explored, and the more concepts I've looked into, the more I see myself in him instead of the boy. And the boy and I are pretty similar, so it's an easy mistake to make.
Except for his vitriolic hatred of horned people communism, I agree.
Yeah, I like horned people communism, but I can see where he's coming from. That part reminds me way more of you.
Yep.
If that comment didn't clue you into it, the character I'm speaking of is Solas. It was a pretty fast turnaround. When Brandy first played through the game, she, because of the way she played, misinterpreted a lot of Solas's motives. So I basically walked into the game thinking, this guy is an asshole. Don't trust him.
Turns out, that second part, probably good advice.
Yeah, second part, not horrible advice. This guy has some secrets, and they're pretty big. But he means well in everything he does.
I dropped a thing. Go ahead.
He's yet another character who keeps a secret for the greater good.
I'm sensing the theme. Got something you want to tell me, White?
No, why? No, nothing. Shut up, look away. But that's not why I like him. I just happened to notice that. I like Solas because he's open to anything, except for Kunari.
Horn people communism, yeah.
But even still, he's willing to make exceptions, and that shows that with some work, he might be open to that idea in general. He's standoffish and stubborn and blunt, and I come across that way to a lot of people, if I'm not trying really hard not to. But he also tries to take a lot of time to show how much he cares about people, and to allow ideas to develop. And he has his own viewpoint of the world, and it's a rather attractive one. He's passionate, and even though he doesn't get to be the hero who saves everything, and even though he's fucked up a lot in the past, he does his best and hopes that's good enough, but never asks for that validation. He's confident, even if everything is secretly falling apart. I could go on at length about his individual theories and the ways he treats certain characters and the connections he has with people and some of the little funny references and things like that that are a part of his web of personage. But That's not really what we're doing here. I think I've covered why I like him in general. Um, what's especially great, my latest Dragon Age Inquisition playthrough, which is to be my main playthrough. Um, I've had Solus in my party the whole time because he is my Solus bro. Uh, and through some sort of magic, he has only said super nice things to everybody. Like those dialogues that sometimes
You
trigger.
don't take the people who piss him off.
Oh yeah, no. I mean,
because you didn't recruit Vivienne.
no, I did not. She's awful.
Yes, she is.
Strong and has dealt with a lot, but she's super prejudiced,
Also,
and I don't tolerate that.
Just real talk, totally would be on my top 10 least favorite characters in all of fiction.
Oh, she's evil and not
Not
even
in a good
apologetic about it.
Not in a fun way.
No.
Not in a good way.
She's just like oppressively nasty. But let's move on to brighter things. What's in your number 3 slot, the boy?
This is my cheater slot, listener.
All right.
This is 2 characters, but they're both the same spot because, as far as I'm concerned, they're completely inextricable. You cannot separate one from the other. Sherlock Holmes and Dr. John Watson. So many different portrayals. I'm more fond of like the original books and the most recent Robert Downey Jr. movie and the BBC Sherlock because those keep Watson as the character that he is. Because a lot of the more like iconic Basil Rathbone sort of stuff in that era reduced Watson to a caricature, a comedy sidekick.
Fat Watson, as he's often referred to.
That's not John Watson. That's not who he's supposed to be. That's not who he was in the books. He's a very important part of that team. Just as important as Sherlock for very different reasons. They're completely inseparable. They are a unit. And they are... Listener, you ever seen The Mighty Ducks? Specifically D2. The Mighty Ducks.
Judgment Duck?
Judgment Duck, yes. There's a...
I'll be quack.
In the... give me a second. In that movie, there are 2 characters, 2 big, strong teenage guys who end up beating up the members of the other teams. They're called the Bash Brothers. That term signifies a lot for me. It's the inseparable duo of friends, and this is why I don't like the fucking Elementary, the American Sherlock. I don't fucking like that. Because they made Watson a girl and inserted sexual tension into that relationship, and that shouldn't fucking be there. That's not what that character relationship is for. They don't want to kiss each other. They're just the best of friends. And it's such a good dynamic for these 2 fucked up people. Even Watson is also kind of a fucked up individual. You can tell just because he continues to fucking hang out with Sherlock. That brotherhood is exemplified well in the Robert Downey Jr. movies, better in the BBC Sherlock, and that's down to Martin Freeman's performance. He's better than Jude Law. And that's Watson's end to hold up most of the time. Between Robert Downey Jr. and Blamble Lip Slap Your Batch, I'm not going to say who's better there because I like them both for different reasons, but the character is... Also, you've heard me talk about this in my Favorite Books podcast. He informed a lot of how I view the world, Sherlock Holmes did. And so
take all the cocaine, solve all the mysteries.
Yeah, take all the cocaine and solve all the mysteries. And so there's a fondness there just because he was so formative for me that I can't get away from it.
Right on. I think I'll add to that. I like seeing couples in media, and I like shipping now and then. It's fun and it's harmless. But I also really respect the bond of 2 best friends. Coincidentally, my Dragon Age playthrough, I am playing a female elf inquisitor. At this point, there's nobody else who I'm romancing. I could completely and easily romance Solus, but I don't because they're just best fucking friends. And, it's nice. It feels good to see 2 people who are just yin and yang to each other.
Yep.
It's nice. I don't think people explore it enough. I think it descends into romance too much. And there's nothing wrong with romance, but let's have a little bit of all things.
In my Dragon Age playthrough, my Inquisitor ended up being BFFs with Dorian.
Yeah.
He and Dorian were just like catty bitches together.
Well, let's roll on to my number 3. Where to begin? Where to fucking begin?
The beginning?
When I was a young man.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I did it half for the reaction, listener. If you don't get that joke, Google the words "when I was a young man." When I was formative, when I was a teensy white, I had so little that I digested as media. You could call it sheltered, but I don't know that it was for that reason. I mean, it was a combination of, not having a lot of extra disposable income, and different priorities, really. But the things I did take in impacted me very deeply. And for whatever fucking reason, chiefly among them, were clowns. I went to the circus once when I was little, but I don't really remember the clowns. I can't ever remember, dressing up as one for Halloween or something. I never had one at my birthday party, but I always am, and to this day, drawn to clowns. So that's perhaps the beginning of why I liked this character. But by no means is it the end. The person I am talking about, as the boy so subtly hinted toward, is the Joker. I'm the kind of person who really needs to strongly identify with something in a work of fiction in order to sink my teeth into it. And for better or worse, more than anything, I have always seen a lot of myself in the Joker. Not that I'm a homicidal maniac outwardly, but no matter what he doesn't take it seriously. And there's a difference between, never being able to take responsibility and not taking things seriously. You don't always have to be grimdark about everything. Make light of situations that maybe should be, maybe most people feel should be treated with a bit more decorum. I mean, depending on the company you're in, there are lines you shouldn't cross, and maybe morally speaking, you feel there are lines you shouldn't cross. I have that myself, because again, not a psychopathic, murderer.
That you know of.
That you know of, allegedly. But everything about his relationship with Batman, to him, is a game. No matter the incarnation of the Joker.
Yeah, whereas Batman is always serious. This is always very serious shit that's going on. For the Joker, this is for a laugh. This is a joke.
And I love Batman, but golly, could he stand to lighten up?
And that's how you know he sees a lot of himself in the Joker. I love Batman. God, he could use a laugh.
Again, I could sit here and wax philosophical about Mr. J for a while. But I think that's the biggest thing. The biggest thing about Batman is that he is comfortable being who he is, even when who he is isn't popular. So he pretends to be somebody else around other people, and then is who he is when he needs to be. The Joker is always himself, and he's always having a good time.
Regardless of anything you might think would be wrong with that.
So,
you can deal.
My quilt bag people out there in the audience, take that under your fabulous wings and own it. Be the Joker, but don't kill orphans. You're number 2.
Sometimes. My number 2 is another character from a series I mentioned earlier on here. Harry Blackstone Copperfield Dresden. From the Dresden
Gesundheit.
books. That's his name. Conjure it by your own risk. Okay, again, he's a wizard. That's plus 10 points right there.
He's Wizard Sherlock Holmes. I mean,
He's Wizard Sherlock Holmes, nor Detective Batman. Are you fucking kidding me? Of course I love him.
mathematically, it just.
He's got oodles of delicious, delicious flaws that he can learn to get over as he ages, and he has, and that's important. He's gone through so much character development. He's, much like some of the characters on your list, he's comfortable doing what needs to be done, but, and this marks a departure from the characters you've mentioned, not past a certain point. There comes a point when Harry Dresden would rather die than win. That's a really cool character trait. Now, he's the protagonist of the book, so he finds a way to win anyway, but there are points where he would rather die than win. That's a good character trait. That's really solid character building. And besides that, he's intelligent, he's funny, he makes good jokes beyond just being funny in and of itself. He makes good actual jokes. He is good at making plans, and at the same time, he is Indiana Jones with magic powers. He can plan on his feet. There are many, many minutiae reasons why I like this character. And normally I would try and go for like a larger overarching reason, but the part I love about Harry Dresden is the details. That's the things I love about him, is the details. On the surface, he's wizard detective. It's all the little tiny details and all the craft that went into making this character as complex and well-rounded and tormented and conflicted as he is, are the parts I love about him. I'm not going to bore your ear off for the next 4 hours about it, listener, but I would suggest you read the Dresden Files. Jim Butcher says he really regrets that people have to get into the Dresden Files by reading the books he wrote when he was young and kind of stupid.
Oh, I feel that way about Colt.
Get through to a certain point, and the book series gets real good. It starts off good, gets real good, and then past a certain point, gets fucking amazing.
If you don't hate a character I hate, it gets good around the 4th book. Like, real good.
Mm-hmm.
And then it gets even better from there.
But there's a character he hates that makes it very hard to like. If I continue, I will just start to gush, because this character is as close to a protagonist, is as close to a role-playing game character that I have played as I'm going to see in fiction, besides a literal role-playing game character that I have played that's been in fiction. Who I don't like as well, ironically.
Yeah, well, he's kind of a dick.
He is kind of a dick.
My number 2 spot, I should clarify here, my number 2 spot, if I had my druthers, would go to somebody else. I'll keep this brief, but this person is a combination of all of the character traits that I have mentioned up until now, except clown.
I'm seeing it, it's really funny.
But because I had a portion of a hand in making this character, I didn't feel it would be fair to put her on the list. And that is my Commander Shepard. Mostly renegade, nice to her people.
That's the reason my Snarky Hawk isn't on the list, by the way.
She would be number 2 with a bullet. Easy. Easy, 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 easy. Sorry, Cole. You get bumped down to 11. But because I had a hand in her deeds, I don't feel comfortable putting her there.
So instead,
at my number 2 for this list, kind of a weird one, all things considered.
These have all been rather dramatic characters.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them make jokes, but there's not anyone from really, like, anything comedic.
And ironically, the reason I like this character isn't necessarily the comedy.
No.
In fact, I would say it isn't. My number 2 character is Hank Hill from King of the Hill. Yeah, my second favorite character of all time is the guy who goes, woo!
And God dang it, Bobby!
But that's not the reason I like him.
That's part of the reason you like him.
No, it's fun. It's a fun noise to make, and it makes me laugh, but Hank Hill is lucky, but I can compare him a lot to what I just said about the Joker. He is who he is, and he isn't afraid to be it. He stands up for what he believes in, even if those things he believes in are small. He's not afraid to speak his mind to his father, to the law.
Not to Buck Strickland.
Well, he keeps his mouth shut. He knows when to mind his P's and Q's. He's an everyman, and he's like the best everyman.
You made a post about it on Facebook or Tumblr or somewhere that you said you feel like your life changed when you stopped empathizing with Trent.
Trent Lane?
Yeah, Trent Lane, and began empathizing with Dory's dad,
Jake Morgendorffer.
And I feel like it's the same sort of vibe from Hank Hill. The same sort of reasons you like him.
Except that unlike Jake Morgendorffer, Hank Hill has his shit together.
Yes, he does. Very together most of the time.
He's the leader and most responsible person in his friend group. He takes care of the people around him. He has his passions that he works very hard on and is very proud of, but in a humble way. He is a simple man, but he is a good man. Not unlike Michael Carpenter. Just without a magic hammer and Jesus powers.
It's magic sword.
Magic sword, I'm sorry.
He does get Thor's hammer later on in the series.
Well, there you go. See, I am psychic, I guess.
It's a Thor's hammer bottle opener.
Oh, well. But it opens the fuck out of bottles.
Apparently it does.
Yeah, I mean, maybe it's weird to put that much stock in Hank Hill. I'll be honest with you, one of the people who got bumped from my list was Dan Connor of Roseanne fame. I ended up bumping him because he's ultimately more flawed than I would like to aspire to. Hank is the version of Dan that has his shit together.
Just slightly more.
And he puts up with Peggy.
Who? Man deserves a fucking sainthood for that shit. Peggy Hill. One of the most detestable beings I've ever seen.
She gets better at, like, the last season.
Yeah, exactly. The last 4 episodes.
But I think it's time. I'm not going to drum roll because the camera is on that table.
Also because this is not a fucking surprise.
Who could it possibly be? Is it Harry Potter?
No.
Is it the Penguin?
Still no. Closer.
I'm out of jokes.
Good. It's Batman. Of course it's Batman.
That was a dumb bit. Let's never do that again.
No. I liked it. I'm keeping it. We're doing it again. I'm doing it next podcast.
Fuck.
Of course it's Batman. I'm literally wearing pants that say Batman on them right now. Batman is the first superhero I ever saw. He is hands down my favorite superhero because Steve Rogers is a good man. Batman is a good man with issues. And
it's easy to be Steve Rogers. Batman has to deal with some shit.
Yep. It's so many reasons. He encompasses so many of the reasons I like other characters on this list. He's intelligent and well thought out. He's open to interpretation. He's a strong character with strong morals that he doesn't compromise on. And there are parts where he'd rather die than win, if winning means breaking his rules. He's like a distillation of so much of the stuff that I like about other characters on this list in his best form. He hasn't always been portrayed the best. There are some portrayals of Batman I'm not super fond of. But when he's done well, he is a glowing recommendation for humanity. And I think that's the best way I can put it.
I like that. Similar to how you have Batman pants, I have lots of clothes of lots of characters, this one not excluded. But there's, at this point in my life, only one person I have inscribed in my flesh. Everything the Joker is, with a tragic backstory.
Possibly.
Well, okay, Joker could possibly have a tragic backstory, but everything the Joker is with a definite tragic backstory. And God, he won.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is the main antagonist of Final Fantasy VI, my favorite game of all time, Kefka Palazzo. Everything I said about the Joker again, except remove Batman. Uh, he doesn't give a fuck. And one wonders what he used to be like before he was forcibly genetically driven insane. If he ever gave a fuck. But he certainly doesn't now. And he doesn't care if you do. And he will knock over everything you love just to spite you. He's like a...
Literally for no other reason.
Oh, gosh, yeah.
He's a great villain.
Fantastic. I don't think Final Fantasy has done a better villain since...
Or before.
Golbez comes close, but...
Doesn't hit the mark.
Doesn't hit the mark.
That's...
Sephiroth is cool,
not as good
but he's not as good a villain. I mean, like, okay, all of the horrible things he does in a fucking SNES game on the Nintendo back when Nintendo had rules against beer.
Yeah, he poisons entire towns. He destroys the world. He wins.
He wins. And he has these theories of nihilism and he doesn't want to own the world. He wants to fuck with it for a second, but then he wants to blow it all up. It's not about defeating an enemy or getting his greed on or anything. It's fuck it. And that little anger you feel inside of you when you've had a bad day and you know the last straw occurs and you just want to snap. And most of you out there listening don't, because you're responsible human beings. You breathe, you relax, you leave the room, whatever. Those with less control out there might yell, snap at a family member, maybe break something.
Kefka broke the world.
And he lives in that mood.
He's a wonderful villain. I actually like him quite a bit as well, partially because he violates a tenet of storytelling that I've never thought was necessary. There's a tenet of when you're telling a story, when you're writing something, when you're presenting a villain. Bad guys don't think they're the bad guy. Everyone's the hero of their own story. That's not necessarily fucking true. It is very possible to know that you are the bad guy.
But he doesn't care.
Kefka knows, in the end, I'm the villain here. But that doesn't matter, because it's all going to be gone soon anyway.
And, I mean, once you get deeper into that, and I'll try to keep it brief, because gosh, the boy did. Congratulations on that. Once you get deeper into his psyche, into his motivations, when you analyze the things he says, on the surface, he's just a Joker. He is just like, Lord, I'm killing you. But when you actually get deep into it and look at the things he says, and you see those stronger undertones of nihilism, and you understand where it's coming from, it's like you feel kind of sorry for the guy. He never had a good lot in life. He got a pretty good station being a court jester for the Empire. And then they pumped him full of experimental magic goop, and it broke his little mind, and he went power mad and found out he could shoot lasers. What do you do when that happens? You destroy the fucking world. But, like, I would love to see Final Fantasy VI told from his point of view, not because I think he's the guy in the right, but because I want to watch as he notices himself crumbling, as he slowly comes to realize that he's just wrong, that he's not just being pragmatic, he's not just doing what needs to be done in order to finish things. He's just wrong.
He's just being evil. He's just being an asshole for no reason.
And I want to see him get to that point and go, good. I don't care.
You want me? It's very good character stuff. I can't deny that.
I tend to like rudos more than I like technicos, and
My list is mostly Technicos.
my list is mostly technicos.
Actually, it's all Technicos. Nope, there's one. Hardy Hackett. And the Joker. I don't know that the Joker's. He's not a bad guy. He's a good guy. He's nice. He's fun. Makes jokes.
He kills nuns, whatever. I only have 3 on here that are bad guys, unless you want to count the boss or Snape.
No.
Yeah, so they were just secret heroes. But yeah, that's the list. You asked, listener. We provided. We engaged our audience. YouTube, you can take away that little ticker. But I hope you enjoyed finding out a little bit more about us via the characters we like. If you do feel as though we missed someone, if you guys are like, well, this motherfucker likes clowns and redemption arcs and this and that, and he didn't pick blah,
please tell us. If there's a amazing character who's like double secret wizard Batman, who also does, if you found another Harry Dresden, please tell me.
If you find like Action Dumbledore.
Yeah, please tell me. That's not a joke, listener. Do so.
But we would love to know. Do you want to run through a couple honorable mentions? Did you have any?
Yeah, I got a whole list of honorable mentions here.
We want to keep it quick. We're already over time, but
yeah, all right. Give me 1 second. You go first. I gotta pull that back up. Because I closed it.
The first several of these were on my list, but I bumped them off. I'm just going to rattle them off. The reasons should be obvious, except for maybe a couple, and I kind of like it if you don't know. Revolver Ocelot, Dan Connor, as I mentioned, Eric Draven the Crow, Winnie the Pooh, Daria Morgendorfer, Shadow from Final Fantasy VI, Squirrel Girl, Raphael the Ninja Turtle, Captain Jack Sparrow, Rupert Giles, Discord from My Little Pony, Varric Tethris, Thane Krios, Rarity, also from My Little Pony, Captain Spaulding, Shredder, Master Splinter, Proto-Man, Bane. I'm going to stop there. There's way more that I had been considering, but that's a good place to stop.
I'll run through some honorable mentions as well. These are obviously not in any particular order.
Oh, no, neither am I.
Gandalf, Tony Stark from the movies, Roland Deschain, V from the movie, Victor Fries, General Johnny Marconi, Hector Barbosa, Velma Dinkley, Thane Krios, Hermione Granger, Lieutenant Karen Murphy, Rorschach, Ron Weasley, Colt Regan, Daria Morgendorfer, Captain Spaulding, Chandler Bing, Randall Graves, Captain Jean-Luc Picard, Hannibal King from Blade Trinity, Han Solo, Mab, and I'll stop there.
You know, you can kind of tell why we're friends. There's some intersections, obviously. We both had Batman and the Joker. We both mentioned Captain Spaulding. But on the boys' list, we've got Han Solo is the big one, the big Star Wars character that stands out. On my list, a little further down, so one thing I considered was Luke Skywalker.
We are two separate but equal human beings. We have very similar but very slightly different tastes.
I suppose to that extent, at least as far as the Two Nerds podcast goes, there is no White Raven without the boy, and vice versa.
I can't improve on that. Everything's better when nerds talk about it.
Fuck it, let's get hot!